this is recording.
RTI
International
Center for
Forensic
Science
presents
Just Science.
Welcome to Just Science, a podcast for forensic science professionals and anyone who is interested in learning more about how real crime laboratories work. In this special release season of Just Science, we discuss leadership with prominent names in the forensic community. This episode features Martina Bison-Huckaby, the director of the Center for Executive Education at West Virginia University's College of Business and Economics. Just Science examines how understanding and relating with people separates leadership from management. Taking business techniques and human psychology into a crime lab leadership position can be challenging. Martina Bison-Huckaby shows how West Virginia University, ASCLD, and the National Institute of Justice are aiding forensic scientists who are seeking leadership help. This season was funded by the National Institute of Justice's Forensic Technology Center of Excellence. Here's your host, Dr. John Morgan.
Welcome to the Just Science podcast, the podcast for forensic science professionals. We're here this week at the American Society of Crime Lab Directors meeting in Dallas, Texas in early May. Today we're actually going to be having a discussion with Martina Bison-Huckaby from West Virginia University. Are you the executive director of the WVU Leadership Academy?
I'm the director of a Center for Executive Education and the Forensic Management Academy.
Forensic Management Academy at West Virginia University.
At West Virginia University.
Certainly the leading professional development academy for leadership development in forensic sciences in the country.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. So Martina and I have gotten to know each other a lot more because she's been working on some of the other activities that RTI has been involved in, not only part of the Forensic Technology Center of Excellence, but also our National Forensic Science Academy work, which is also a leadership development academy, trying to develop a certification program associated with this area. Martina, welcome.
Thank you for the great introduction, John.
So one of the things that's really interesting here to a lot of forensic scientists is the idea that, well, why do I need to learn leadership per se? Why don't we start with that in terms of, your view of the importance of leadership in the forensic science community?
Certainly. So in the forensic community, very often we have people that are hired as bench scientists that are very strong technical skills, and they spent all their education and experience cultivating their excellence in the technical field. And then what happens, as in many other scientific industries, not just in forensics, we find that everywhere. Because of that, they are rewarded with a leadership position. So they start as supervisors, then eventually they become managers of a unit, and they become crime lab directors. But very often this progression is made without realizing that they have to learn a new set of skills. And so for that reason, we started looking into this over 10 years ago and started developing what was the beginning of a Forensic Management Academy. Because, just like we were listening in the session today, really lots of problems that can arise in a lab have to do with the human relations. That's what leadership is about. Is about making sure that people work at their greatest potential. And in order to do that, you have to be focusing on cultivating people around you. So this is not something that they're necessarily focusing on. So they really need to do a mind shift. All these type of skills that have to do with communication, that have to do with team building, conflict management, motivation, these are going to be part of their jobs now, so that they really need to concentrate on that.
So how did you learn about leadership and management yourself? How did you build the expertise to lead this effort?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Well, it's intimidating, frankly. I mean, that's a difficult area in some respects.
I guess I maybe had a similar experience without realizing, because I also was hired in an organization. It's actually an entertainment company.
Yes.
I used to work for Saban Entertainment. They used to do programs like the Power Rangers, and grew very quickly from being a legal assistant to become a director of an area. And so that was trial and error. I really didn't think much about that. I was just, very much trying to get things done. I was more as a manager more than a leader. So we were in Los Angeles at the time. Because my family relocated to West Virginia 17 years ago, I had the opportunity to reinvent myself, and I decided to go back to school. And I did my MBA at West Virginia University, in the college where I work. But I was really interested in leadership development in organizational behavior. So I went to work for a company called CLG, which is Continuous Learning Group, and they do basically performance improvement using applied behavioral science. So I have that background. At that point, my predecessor, Maria Mancini-Yester, she actually told me that there was a position opening, and I really wanted to be able to use this skill set to develop new programs also for the state of West Virginia and for the university I just graduated. So I applied for the position and I became the associate director.
There are two things you said that I think are very interesting. I'd like to tear them apart before we get any further.
Sure.
One is you made the distinction, which I think is a very important one, between leadership and management. And it's the distinction, I think, that somebody who is new into the area is most likely to say, well, I don't need leadership. I'm a manager, right? When I manage, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So tear that apart for us a little bit, just definitionally, if nothing else.
Yes, management is you're oriented on tasks, on getting things done, on process improvement, more than people. And conversely, leadership is about developing people, the people around you, establishing a vision and having people follow you. Leadership is not a matter of a position. It's a matter of an attitude, and particularly the attitude of developing others. That's where you really stop concentrating on yourself and you really concentrate on really bringing out the best in the people that are around you. So when you're new in a capacity of a manager or a leader, you generally concentrate more on getting things done, getting your numbers done without thinking of the people that are part of the process.
Right. Leadership is about service in some respect, right?
It is absolutely about service. In fact, there's a whole concept of servant leader, which is one of the books we actually give participants to read in the program, which is, it is about removing the obstacles for the people around you so that they can, deliver, what you ask them to do.
And anybody in an organization can be a leader. You don't have to have necessarily formal authority to be a leader, right?
Exactly. So there are different definitions of management and leadership, and I think they're a little bit situational. So the one that I generally use is the one that management is about tasks and leadership is about people. Very often we look at, manager more of starting position and leadership more of a, like director level. So it kind of depends on the context that you're using it. And sometimes they even feel like management has a negative connotation and leadership has a positive connotation. But I do think there are two halves of the same. One of them is, related to tasks, more like project management, process improvement, so like the operations part of a business, while leadership is about the people.
The other thing I want to expand on that you mentioned is your background in, I'll call it applied behavioral psychology. Is that a reasonable way to call it?
Yes.
And I guess part of it is that I think there's been a time when there was a focus really truly on management per se. The old Peter Drucker school, which had enormous value in its time. And people talked about leadership, but when they talked about leadership, it was mostly, wisdom, let's put it that way. And when they went beyond that, they sometimes were a little too soft. It's like, what are you even talking about, man? But the research and understanding, it's not perfect by any stretch, but it's certainly improved in behavioral psychology. And so you can pull more of that knowledge into how you do leadership training.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about it. How do you do that? How have you tried to pull that behavioral psychology into leadership development?
Yes. Specifically, the organization I used to work really studied motivation and how to change behavior. So they would go in an organization and they would identify what were the drivers that were really could potentially change the performance of the organization, and they would identify the specific behaviors and who were the specific performers. Like in an airline, good example in this time, the flight attendants, and are very important, for the experience. And so they essentially were able to change the behavior by using feedback. They really were a very successful organization that is able to apply these rules of applied behavioral science, and essentially by giving particularly positive feedback, by catching people doing things right, rather than telling them when they're doing things wrong, by observing the correct behavior, people are going to do what is called discretionary effort. They really go above and beyond. So it's a way of influencing, but it's all about leadership, So we really use these concepts in our classes as well, like in the motivation, retention, but it's kind of interspersed in the way you do leadership on a regular basis,
Sure. So I've heard motivation talked about in a very particular way, in the sense that it's internalized to the person, right? I mean, I have my own motivations. You can't change necessarily my motivations, but you can understand my motivations and use that for persuasion and to, get me to do things that are beneficial to myself, hopefully, but also for others.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you cannot motivate people. You can create an environment, first of all, by creating clarity on what it is that you expect from them. So that's technically called the antecedents.
Yeah.
I'm being very technical now. But at the end of the day, is create the environment, and it's from you giving the vision, from you understanding what it is that drives that particular person. So looking at things from their perspective, that you really can have an impact. But it is you have to touch them, in the heart.
Yeah, that's right. I have to tell you, I agree basically with it. The language of you can't motivate people is always something I've had a problem with, because motivation, the root of the word is movement, right?
Yes.
You can move people based on what their motivations are. I want to make sure we convey to people, by understanding people's motivations, you can motivate them in the sense that you can move them into actions and
you're
and
absolutely
attitudes,
right. I mean,
right?
this is the whole concept of leadership. So
Right.
I don't want to give the idea that
lead
I don't
them,
think
right, yeah.
that I don't think that you can be a motivator. But this is what the professors in my program always say: you cannot motivate people. They start like that because
Right.
I think at the end of the day they need to want to do it themselves. Otherwise, what they're going to be doing is just compliance at the best.
Right.
And so what you're going to get is minimal effort. They're going to fill the paperwork that they have to, but not really care about it. So it has to come from inside. But you, as a leader, can be the person that triggers that. Mm-hmm. And so that's what you need to learn to do.
With all that background, now this is in the business school at West Virginia
Yeah,
University,
absolutely.
right? So
That's strange.
It is. So in a way, it's a good thing because
yes.
that it's tying forensic science into these broader efforts in the business community, right?
Absolutely.
Tell us
yes.
about how did that come about? The Management Institute be in the business school for forensic science?
Absolutely. So when I came on board, it was 2005, and I think at the time the West Virginia University already had received some funds from the NIJ to create the Forensic Science Initiative. And I know the FBI also had been moved to the state maybe a couple of years earlier, and we were involved in the ASCLD. In actually, coincidentally, we are at ASCLD.
Right.
And so we were involved in putting together the conference, I believe, for 3 years, and that's when I started. And so Max was hired in the forensic department, and
Max Houck is who you're talking.
Yes, sorry. And I also believe we had a concurrent effort from another professor, Dick Riley, that again with funds from the NIJ was creating curriculum for forensic accounting. So we started to have interest in both business of forensics and the forensic of business. So forensic accounting being the business of forensics, the other way around.
The other way around.
Yeah, I just messed myself up,
It's
I'm
fine.
sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but in any event, so we started doing some strategic planning of the ASCLD board. So Dr. Dolly was involved, Dr. Speaker was involved. So there was a conglomerate of very progressive thinkers in the College of Business and Economics and in forensic department, as well as in the industry, such as Dean Jalamas, that at the time I think he was in the Orange County Sheriff's Department.
Right.
And so we started attending the conference, and there was a need identified, I believe, by the NIJ back in 1999, that there was a need in the industry for more management and business training, specifically in human relations. And so we had tried to do some programs at ASCLD. The time was not right. And so then we were able to utilize part of the funds to create the concept of a Forensic Management Academy. And that was back in 2006. And launched the program for the first time, fully sponsored by the NIJ,
Sure.
in 2007. Yeah, so we had the very first class in 2007. Lots of applications, like we had something like 500 applicants.
Well, I think there's a real hunger for it. We'll put the link to the 1999 document was the Technical Working Group on Education and Forensic Science.
Thank you. I remember the year.
It's part of the arcana of forensic science that I just know. But it certainly was a landmark document. And in talking about this aspect in particular, it also did some other things like led to the national accreditation of forensic education programs like under FEPAC. My biggest disappointment, not my biggest, one of my disappointments with the National Academy's report in 2009 is it really glossed over this. It mentioned and referenced the 1999 TWIG-Ed report and said, yeah, we need to do more leadership and management training, but really didn't understand how central it was to almost every issue where forensic science has gotten criticized. The vast majority certainly have some core with respect to how a lab is managed, how the people are hired and developed, and the culture in that laboratory and that kind of thing, as much as the science behind a particular discipline.
Yeah, I understand, and definitely there was a hunger for it in the industry. Like I mentioned, we had the first 3 years is when it was sponsored by the NIJ, and we would have like 500 applicants, and we had 20 spots.
Yeah.
So it was really a challenge to pick who was going to participate. So we were trying to get a cross-section of the United States. And, we started rolling these programs, with Dean Jalamas, Paul Speaker, those are some of the original instructors in the program. And you can tell that the participants really were like sponges. I mean, some of these concepts they had never heard before. That's not what they were concentrated on. And also they really were benefiting from interacting with each other, sharing their challenges, because we really had a diverse group. And then we also, as part of a program, they had to do a project where they were writing a paper and basically telling us how they had applied what they learned in their laboratory. And I remember reading this paper, I was blown away by what they were taking, whether it would be process improvement, I remember some people did that, or whether it was team building, or some of the leadership concepts. We were using DISC to be able to look at people's behavior and try to understand their motivation and how their communication was improving because they were reflecting on starting to do a mind shift, like I was saying. Yeah, so I could immediately see how beneficial it was.
So it's a week-long course now. Was it a week-long course from the beginning?
Yeah, the format was always the same. It's basically the face-to-face portion is a week-long, starts on Sunday, ends on Friday, but it's preceded by work that you do before you come. There's a questionnaire that's called the Topical Knowledge Survey, where each instructor asks questions to the group related to their topic so that they can assess the knowledge the participants have on that topic, as well as the interest, so that they can change the class to target to the actual participants. And then we send them a packet of material that is quite hefty. Lots of books to read, like Financial Intelligence, Dr. Speaker, and some leadership book, like I was mentioning, Servant Leader, and some others. And then they come to class, and so that's the boot camp portion that is very intense, week-long program. So that's the entirety of.
There's no push-ups involved, though, even though it's a boot camp type program.
No. None of that.
None of that, okay. It's not the Marine Corps leadership program. So tell me a little bit about, kind of the breadth of it, because even with a week-long program, you still have to do some picking and choosing, because this really is so much, it really is a management academy. So it gets into some management aspects too, I assume.
Yeah, it's a leadership and management. In fact, it's a little bit of both, so it's not just leadership. It has developed throughout the years. We really always improve it. We did a lot of what we call plus delta in the first few years, where you ask things that are, that you want to change and things that you want to keep the same. And so the curriculum really has evolved and been fine-tuned, and the people involved, the instructors have changed, throughout the years for different reasons. So we always seek the best.
Sure.
But the topics that are the core, like leadership and conflict management, team building, and then succession planning, which is really important. So that's the leadership core, and the cost-benefit analysis and budgeting. Those remain the core of the program. So there's a little bit of leadership and a little bit of management. One that we used to have, for example, is strategic planning, and we removed that from the program because we seek more of a focus on public labs. But that's something maybe that would require there's so much you can do in a week.
Right.
So we felt that we didn't have enough time to address that would have been maybe a follow-up training.
NIJ only funded for the first few years.
Yeah, 3.
First 3 years, and it's now a program that you either somebody pays to go to West Virginia University, but you also will do some regional events as well. Is that right?
Yes.
So tell me how the regional events work.
Yes. So if we're contacted by organizations and they basically, I do an informal need analysis on the phone about their training needs. And during that conversation, I understand how many people they have that they need trained. If there's more than 10, then I talk to them about the potential of us coming there. And in some organizations, they were able to offer the training exclusively with people within the organization itself. But in some cases, they really only had 10 or 15, and so they were able to contact neighboring labs and create like a regional academy that is composed of people in the area around them. I can make you a couple of examples of that. For example, the Pikesville in Maryland, Maryland State Police.
Yes, my old stomping grounds.
Really, that's right.
Yeah, Maryland. But
They teamed up twice, actually, with Pennsylvania State Police, had us there twice. They actually were one of the first custom program we created back several years ago. And then they had us back a year ago. And so they had participants from both, and even from the DC area, because I opened it up. And then most recently, Los Angeles, they have the facility that has the LAPD and the LSD in the same place. And
Los Angeles Sheriff's Department
and Los Angeles Police Department. And they share a facility. And so we brought the training there, and they had other participants from San Francisco, San Diego, and even Idaho, actually. Because they generally send them to our academy in West Virginia, but this year, since we were over there, they decided to join that group.
Sure, more cost-effective.
Yeah, more cost-effective. So we've offered this program to at least 15 different organizations. By that I mean in 15 different organizations.
Right, so you've done the regional kind of academy in 15
but the
places.
participants from those organizations were not necessarily all from that location.
In addition to the many people who've come to West Virginia.
In fact, we always count the people that came to the public program, which are, I think, in the 170 group, so it's not like a large group, but we have hundreds of people that we actually train all over the United States. We actually started doing some program abroad as well.
That's excellent. That's excellent.
Thanks.
So I see Lean Six Sigma out on your among your papers. So tell me about Lean Six Sigma and how it relates to your program.
Yeah, this is more on the management aspect in my mind. So I was looking to offer additional training for the forensic industry. And as I was coming to conferences, I started seeing the success of Lean Six Sigma being implemented in several labs. And also the importance of becoming more efficient and with a backlog and scarce resources. So I really wanted to contribute to that as well. And this was an aspect that we were missing. And so I started asking in the forensic industry, I call it industry, as to who would be the best instructor for that program. Everybody said Tim Kupferschmidt. Currently is the chief of laboratories in New York City Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. I believe he was one of the founder of Sorenson Forensics. So he's a black belt and has implemented Lean Six Sigma for over 10 years successfully in forensics. So I engaged him, we discussed what would be a great format for this program, because I really wanted the program to have a wide access, both nationally and internationally, but I also knew that it needed to be delivered during the course of time. At least I think the best way is to do it during at least 6 months. You don't want to do like a Lean Six Sigma boot camp. So we decided the best way to achieve that goal was to offer a series of webinars, live webinars. So this is the second year that we are delivering the program, and I'm very happy with the results. We start in March, and we do a series of 17 live webinars. Each webinar is 2 hours in length. The first one is an orientation on what is the concept of Lean Six Sigma, which is a process improvement methodology, and also what is a good project, particularly for the class. Some people enroll individually, some people enroll in teams, and they work on the same project. And then during the course of 6 months, there are these 2 hour long webinars where, team does a little bit of lecturing on the program. There's homework. There are tollgate presentations where the participants actually take turn to actually present where they are in the project. And it's a community where everybody from different labs in the United States, and in this case also Costa Rica, because we have 2 participants from Costa Rica, they talk about their challenges, this is what we're trying to do, and really, team really leads everybody and gives advice.
It's all from a forensic science perspective,
Absolutely.
Which is really unusual, I think, because Lean Six Sigma, its roots are over in like semiconductor processing.
Oh, absolutely, that's a manufacturing based. So yeah, but this is for forensic professional, and the examples are from labs, and the participants are forensic professionals. So specifically for this industry. So there's a pause for 3 weeks where they prepare their projects, and then on this particular year, it's September 12th. We get together in Pittsburgh, next to the airport, easy access. And
it's a hub, after all, efficient of you.
And in the morning, we have a session led by Dean Jalamas about leading change. I wanted to also capture the human aspect of change, again, because I'm thinking leadership and management. And yes, you improve the process, but at the end of the day, the people have to change what they're doing. So,
Sure.
so Dean is able to give some tools on how to get the buy-in and really to lead change in the organization. And then in the afternoon, everybody presents their project, and they become green belts.
What kind of folks have been going into that program? Is it all managers, or are you getting some of the bench level folks, or what kind of folks are you getting into the program?
Mostly managers. Yeah, mostly managers, some quality assurance people, but generally not bench. I haven't had many bench scientists.
Yeah. I hope that they really see that in the context of the leadership, because I think process improvement, especially in a modern organization, we're all kind of systems designers, right?
Yeah.
We have to be able to adapt to what the mission of the organization is, what our role is, and how processes that we're involved in can be optimized all the time. And so I think we all have a role in Lean Six Sigma, not just the management folks.
I think they also see how more efficient it is. So they understand the value of that, and they have ownership of improving things. So from the human perspective, I think in a morale standpoint, seeing that there is an improvement in the processes and things are turned around quicker, it can motivate you. But it is definitely important to keep that aspect in mind, the leadership aspect in the program, because otherwise you don't want them to say, okay, everybody turns this way today, and they have to understand the reason and what's the end result.
Sure. Yeah, it's an interesting juxtaposition in the sense that Lean Six Sigma kind of anticipates that you're going to be dealing with the errors in the organization. And forensic science in particular is very resistant to error. It doesn't like to make mistakes.
There's no tolerance for errors.
And exactly. And that makes it have less tolerance for innovation as well. And sometimes lack of innovation can create problems. So having that balance, how you bring in, it can be a new technology, a new research project from NIJ, when they have something new coming out of the scientific laboratory or some kind of process improvement. You need to have the ability to understand how that relates to your current processes, how you can integrate it, how you can do that innovation without compromising the quality of the work.
Yeah, I mean, there are different kinds of projects. One of the effort is also error reduction. And one would have to be doing with time, turning things around faster. But part of the process is to create a uniformity in how you do things. Mm-hmm. So just to study the process and make sure you always do things the same way. And I think by itself that leads to a reduction in error because you have a consistent process.
It's very ISO.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ISO folks love that kind of approach to it. And you're right. And we're very lucky to have Tim because I think he's very passionate and dedicated to this Lean Six Sigma philosophy. And he really is very available to our students. He tells them that he's sensei for life. And so I really like to see that passion, and so I suspect that it becomes a community and that, he still talks to the participants from last year. Sure. And always available to help them. So at the beginning of class, he apologizes in advance to our significant others because he says that we're going to change the way we look at things. Sure. Forever. And so that, if we're in line somewhere, we're always going to want to improve things. And right. So I thought that was pretty funny. So. Yeah, there are a couple of different kinds of people in the world. There are people who want to keep it simple, and then there's the optimizers. Right?
Yeah.
And so when you go through that program, you become the optimizers.
Yes.
I'm a very simple person myself, but I don't mind being, as long as you don't challenge me too much on optimizing every day, that's fine. So is there a way for folks to be able to learn more about the program at WVU and sort of follow up from the podcast and what we've learned today?
Sure. They can always reach me, but I also, in our website, there is also a information webinar that we recorded with Tim and myself where we talk about the program, the Lean Six Sigma program specifically.
Well, feel free to give the website. We'll also put a link on the podcast landing page for this particular podcast so people can go there. Or what is the website?
It's business.wvu.edu. After that, you can follow links for my center. You can find the Lean Six Sigma page.
Thank you very much for participating with us, Martina. It's been a delight to have you.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Next week on Just Science, we will talk with Jeremy Triplett, the laboratory supervisor for the Kentucky State Police Forensic Laboratories. Opinions or points of views expressed in this podcast represent a consensus of the authors and do not necessarily represent the official position or policies of its funding.